72 kernels per square foot. Okay? I've done the math on this, and not just me. I just followed John, Catherine's husband. In a square foot, you can have 72 kernels times 43,560 square feet. That will give you 3,136,320 new plants in 1 acre. 15 kernels per plant, multiply it. It equals 44,044,800 kernels per acre. So then I said to John, how many kernels can you get a loaf of bread out of? He said, if 1,000 kernels equals 1 loaf of bread, you will get 47,000 loaves per acre. If you have 160 acres, you will get 7,520,000 loaves of bread. Let's go back to the Biological Diversity Treaty. Before we do that, the number of farms. From 1910 to 2000, it has fallen across the country from 6.5 million to 2 million or less farms. In the state of Oklahoma, from 190,000 farms to 90,000 or less. And when you take a look again at the Biological Diversity Treaty, do you now see what they want? They want our life. Do you see how microchipping of this plays into this? So, what will smart growth do to the value of farmland? I can tell you in the state of Maryland that when they pass smart growth, the designated growth areas, the property has gone up exponentially. And the farmland is in the process of dropping exponentially. 5, regional government. The U.S. to be put in an EU type of trade zone. Here are the various trade zones that they are working on right now in the world. The European Union is already established. They're trying for the Middle East, but I think we're just going to have war there. South Africa is established through Clinton and Bush. The Asian Free Trade Zone is coming into play. China is going to be a very, very major player. And then we have the Americas. So let's take a look at what they've done in the EU first. They've dropped the barriers between the EU states that wanted in. They have free travel. They have a common currency. There were adjustments made between the countries as to who was going to be agricultural and who was going to grow beef and who was going to have the pigs, etc. Every area in Europe has an EU representative, and they meet at the EU Parliament in Strasbourg, France. And they took all their central banks and created one central bank, which is now equal, the European Central Bank, which is now equal to the Federal Reserve. So let's just take a look for a moment at the Western Hemisphere. Here is the Americas. The free trade areas of the Americas was begun in 1994 in Miami, by the way. It is a public-private partnership. It is a public-private partnership between 2 United Nations organizations and the OAS, Organization of American States. The 34 countries will integrate all their currencies and have a common currency. Is this a little scary when you think that our dollar is going to have to drop to equal the peso? And, oh yeah, bilingual. 20 years ago, I asked a woman who was running for Congress, Connie Morella, about why would we want Spanish as a second language. And she couldn't give me a good answer, but she just told me that we needed to have it. Well, she knew something I didn't know. And so today, 20 years later, when you have oatmeal in Spanish and in English, it's almost a little late. The document, the Free Trade Areas of the Americas document says, our goal is to create a, look at this wording, whole new architecture for the relationship of the nations and the peoples of the Americas. Bill Clinton. It goes on to say, the elected heads of state and government of the Americas reiterate our firm adherence to the principles of international law and the purposes and principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. In most of the documents I read, doesn't make any difference what meeting I'm at, you will see within the first or the second paragraph an adherence to United Nations. And the Charter of the Organization of the American States by building strong partnerships. See, we're not talking government again. We're talking public-private partnership. This is nothing but a major corporate buy-up. So we have America with corporations, and we have Latin America with people in agriculture. So we're getting cheap labor, and the problem is, what will their cheap agriculture do to our farms? So we're having it in steps. You know, if the American people really understood, maybe that we might have a Tea Party. I'm not sure. But you have, with the North American Free Trade Zone in 1994, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. You then have the Central American Free Trade Zone, CAFTA, passed in 2005. And now what's left is the rest of Latin America. And how will they come in? One country at a time. Why? Because if they put this to a vote, it would never pass. However, if they now sign individual free trade agreements, like they are now with a number of these countries, then by the time they get done signing individual free trade agreements, it's a fait accompli. Now, let's take a look at something, the Chinese bid for the Caribbean and Latin America. In the first 11 months of 2004, China invested $889 million in Latin America. In Argentina, Argentina exports beef and fruit to China. They total $2.6 billion, which is 6 times the amount they import from China. Brazil has signed a strategic partnership to raise bilateral trade from $10 billion in 2004 to $20 billion by 2007. Chile and Peru are selling copper to China. Venezuela, China is to invest $350 million in oil and $60 million in natural gas. Jamaica has established a partnership of common development. And Mexico has signed 7 cooperative accords. So, do we want to know what's going to happen in Latin America when we become one? Regionalism. There was a very famous person who said, this is what we must do in order to go where we want to go. He said, the UN must prepare for a time when regionalism becomes more ascendant worldwide and even help the process. The Secretary General has called repeatedly for strengthening of regionalism in global governance, which is part of the evolution of human efforts to organize life on planet Earth. Excuse me, this came from Our Global Neighborhood, which is a major document supporting everything we've been discussing. The next quote is from somebody very famous who understood where he wanted to go in life. He said, divide the world into regional groups as a transition stage to world government. Populations will more readily abandon their national loyalties to a vague regional loyalty than they will for world authority. Later, the regions can be brought all the way into a single world dictatorship. This was Joseph Stalin, 1942. Lincoln said in Springfield, no foreign power or combination of foreign powers could by force take a drink from the Blue Ridge. At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? If it ever reach us, it must spring from among us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we ourselves must be its author and finisher. In summary, the adaptation of paganism as the new philosophy to reorder the world is what Agenda 21 is. Adopting the Biological Diversity Treaty is smart growth. The establishment of public-private partnership and regionalism is the loss of representative government. We have control, loss of property rights, increased taxation, feudalism, and the death of America as we know it. The answer to preserving America is you. How will you vote? The simplest choice. The choice is simple. Freedom or bondage. You have just seen a video that is helping you to understand how not only the world is being reordered, but how our rights and freedoms in America and from a state level are being changed. I invite you very sincerely to call
the number on the screen, 301-371-0541. Let me be a resource. Not only let me personally be a resource, but we will be more than happy to provide you, the legislator, with materials, books, other videos, whatever we can to help you understand to protect state rights and American sovereignty. Thank you, and God bless.